Today I'll be looking at a new topic that I learned recently. So scriptable objects, and I'll share how to create scriptable objects and how I have implemented it in my 3D tank game. So we'll look at the changes that I've made so far. So last time I had set up an MVC for the player tank, and I was able to spawn two types of tanks, like the enemy tanks and the player tanks. So this time I implemented a type of customization, like you have different types of tanks, as you can see here. You have the this is the player tank, so it's green, and there are like three types of player tanks: green, blue, and red. And there are the enemy tanks. So the stationary, like the static ones, like the ones that are not moving by themselves, they are the enemy ones. And you can see that there are different types. So there's a brown, purple, and the blue. So the cyan one uh, takes I can like shoot now. I have set that too. So I'm pressing a key and the tank is able to shoot, right? And I'm able to get rid of, like, I'm able to destroy tanks by shooting at them, right? And the thing is, for different tanks, they have different health values. So this brown tank has the most high health, so it took two hits now, three hits, four hits, five, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right, it took 9 hits. And this purple one would take 7 hits, I guess. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it takes 5 hits. So different tanks take different damages. And this data is totally customizable. You don't have to uh, change anything in the scene in order to, or change anything in the script in order to like change the values, right? And that's the whole power of scriptable logics. And yeah, so I've set up a bullet spawner to spawn the bullets, and it also uses the MVC architecture. So we'll see a bunch of controller service view model scripts for the bullet, right? And today we'll be talking about scriptable logics. So scriptable logics is basically taking you're having a script, right? And you're having a class. So a class has members, and you're having objects. Usually when you have a class, you will have objects that store these variables, right? So you have different data to these variables. And in Unity, when you're creating an object, it's mostly using mono behavior, and that object needs to be attached to a game object, right? And that's how you'll create an instance, and that's how you are storing data into that object. And this is not like uh, in the case of when you're having multiple different types of tanks or different entities, different versions of your entities, then you can't have uh, different game objects, right? You can't have different scripts that are attached to game objects, and you can have uh, like in this case you will have multiple scripts having different data values, right? um, and scriptable objects is one way to it's a better way to go in that path of different keeping different versions of data, right? And basically are storing data in the form of assets, like you are storing member data, you're storing you might have a float speed, right? So one type of a tank has 10 in that speed, another type of tank has 50. So you're storing you're in one scriptable object, you have the speed as set to 10, and in another scriptable object of the same class, you're having the speed set as 50. So when you're uh, creating the uh, tank, right? You're creating the tank, creating the player. You'll use this scriptable object instead, and that way uh, you have like freedom to change these values, because these are assets, right? So you have freedom to change these values even during runtime. And basically you won't have to mess with the scripts from there on. You just, if whenever you have some balancing issues, you want to change the attributes of, like you want to change the values of some of the attributes, right? So you can go on directly change in the scriptable objects. So that's the main idea of scriptable objects, and we look at how to set up one. So okay, so I'll talk about the tank scriptable objects. So I'll show you what the scriptable objects look like. So these are the scriptable objects for my uh, player tanks. So I have three player tanks, right? And you can see that the player tank has a health, speed, blood type, and the tank view. So all three types of tanks have different values to them, right? And I have stored them, and you can see that these are we can find these in the project, like in the assets folder. So these are assets, and let me show you the scriptable objects script, tank script. Yeah, cool. So this is the tank scriptable object script. So basically, you're creating a class of the type that you want to store as an object, scriptable logic, right? And you won't be using mono behavior. Instead, you will be deriving from scriptable object. So this will make the instance to be created as an asset, right? And yeah, so you won't need to attach it to game objects too, and you'll specify the attributes that you want to store values in, right? So in here you would have seen the health, speed, bullet view, tank view. So that's what is here, right? And to create, so we'll set this up, and we'll look at this in a minute. So we'll set this up, and at this point when we are in Unity, uh, we can right click in the project window and create, and you'll find scriptable objects and the new tank. So setting this menu up is the next thing that we have to do. So for that, we'll be using this tagline. So create asset menu and file name. The file name is the default file name. So whenever you create the asset, this will be the default file name. And menu name is the main, like drawer, and the next selection. All right. So scriptable objects slash new tank. So when you go here, right click, create scriptable objects slash new tank. So this is how we'll be creating a new tank. So I'll create a load tank, for instance. And now we have created scriptable logic just like these types, and you'll be able to set any sort of values to this, right? Set up a separate thank you for that. And yeah, so that's how we are creating scriptable logics, and I'll show you how to make use of them. So let's go to mm, the MVC for tanks, right? Cool. So we have the tank service, tank controller, uh, tank model, and tank view. Right now, if you go to tank controller, you'll see that I have made some changes, right? I have made use of tank script object. So we'll go to tank service. Tank service is the one that spawns the tank. So we will look at this. So last time I had just made use of a reference for, this is what I had done. So tank view and tank view. So this is what I had done. I would drag and drop the uh, like thing that I want to spawn, right? The tank that I would want to spawn. And this time, what I've done is I have made use of okay. So this is player. This is tank scriptable logic list. What the first step would be to, yeah, get the player tank. So we are getting the player tank scriptable logic, right? And from there, what all you have to do is player tank would now contain these things: health, speed, bullet type, and tank view. So player tank would have those things. So we just go to create player tank, and the things that we want to send here is set up here. So it used to be the speed value, right? We had to send the speed and the health for the model class, and we had to send the bullet type too. So that's a new addition. But tank view was necessary for creating the tank view, right? So we had to instantiate the tank view inside the controller. If you had to look at this, we had to instantiate the tank view, and we had to create the model. So the model required both the data for storing the speed and health, right? So we had done that. And right now, because player tank, that scriptable object, contains uh, both health and speed, and the tank view, right? So we have the three values that we need. So instead, uh, we just have or like we take the player tank. uh, when we're creating, I just pass the player tank itself. I just pass the tank scriptable object, and in controller, with the tank scriptable object, I'm able to instantiate the tank view, right? Because tank contains tank view, and I'm able to create the tank model, right? So tank model has both, like tank scriptable object has both health and speed. So tank model would take uh, that scriptable object, and it would get the values from it, right? So that's what is happening here. Okay. So next up, you might have noticed this tank scriptable object list. So basically, we can have different types of scriptable objects. We already saw that. So the way I would, okay, I'll show you in this way. I don't think it would compile, but uh, field tank scriptable object, and we will pass the tanks here. So this is how we would do, like, so we have, say we are setting up the players, right? So we have player tanks, and we are talking about player tanks, and we now have three player tanks, right? So for three player tanks, you need three speed, right? You need three health, and you also need three views, tank views, right? So that view would be created for the tank, and model would be created, right? And now we have created the assets. We have created the scripted logics for three player tanks as needed. The only thing we have to do is we have to, when we are spawning the tank, we have to set these, like, scriptable objects to those, we have to send them to the controller, right? So that he's able to spawn view and speed, like view one model from those, from that scriptable object. And for that, what we would do is we would create a list of scriptable objects, right? So in Unity now, we'll be able to add all the scriptable logics for each tank into the list, right? So we'll look at that for now. Yeah, so if you go to tank spawner, you'll be able to see this list called tanks, right? So this takes scriptable logic, so I'll be able to drag in and drop all the scriptable objects that I have created. So now I have four tanks, I have four scriptable objects, right? And that's the whole point of it. So from there, I can shuffle between any one of the index that I want, and I'll be able to create the tank from this scriptable objects, because this scriptable objects has the view and the data needed for spawning the tank, right? So that's the whole thing. But uh, right now, the only drawback with this thing is whenever the person has to create a new tank, right? like the designer in your team has to create a new tank. So there's a new type of tank in the that has to be created. And let's say it's a orange tank, right? And orange tank is like 1 1 something. And basically, uh, yes, he'll be able to drag and drop this in, but your tank service script won't, like it wouldn't know that uh, there's a new choice, like there is something new that has been added. uh, yeah, so that's how would I explain this? Yeah, yeah. mm, Let me see. Yeah. So yeah, as you talked about, you're adding a new tank here, right? So when the designer in a team is about to add a new tank, so he creates a new scriptable object, sets a value, and now he comes to this scene, and he has to update this tank variable to like add the new tank scriptable logic into this list. So this is pretty risky. So you're basically you like there can be mistakes, right? There mistakes can be made, and maybe this tank spawner is in like multiple scenes and somebody's sister scenes or something like that. And so basically messing with the scene is not nice, like not safe. And for that we can come up with another like scriptable logic, right? So basically a scriptable logic that holds uh, like references to other scriptable logic, like references in the sense it carries the data of what scriptable objects are needed. So basically it'll look like this. So let me see. Okay, so have uh, you have a bunch of tanks, right? You have a bunch of tanks, and this is the data that your game needs, right? Let me see. Yeah, I guess this is like let's say this is Unity. So Unity needs this data, right? And these crypto logics you have dropped it in, uh, drag and drop it in from your assets. And right now, whenever the designer has like someone in a team has to create a new type of tank, then they have to add drag it and drop it into this list, right? So in order to like simplify that, we'll have another uh, scripted logic in its place in this middle ground, right? So it'll look like this. Oh, so it'll look like this. And what this thing will have is basically uh, it'll have a list to all the, like basically this list you'll have inside another scripted logic. So this isn't the scripted object as a whole. This is the tank service, right? So this is the tank service that has a list carrying the scripted logics. So we'll have another scripted logic that will carry a list to all the scripted logics. So now Unity is tank service. So tank service will basically have this master scriptable logic, right? And that scriptable object will have the list. So that's what we'll be doing here. So I'll explain it in Unity. We'll look at Unity and we'll get to know what it is. So instead of doing this, we'll be creating a tank scriptable logic. So we'll ignore this for now. We'll look at this. So tank scriptable object list. So I'll explain what tank scriptable object list is. And basically it has only one attribute. So it has a list of tank scriptable logics, right? And I'll show you what happens when you create it. So create scriptable objects and new tank object list. So that's what I had named it. uh, let's name it tank list 2. So now you'll see here you have the list that I had in tank spawner like last time, right? And that's a list of all the scriptable objects, all the types of tanks, right? So I can drag and drop in the scriptable objects into this scriptable object. So this is like a master scriptable object that contains all types of different types of tanks, right? And blue, green, orange, red, yellow. So now we'll get this reference. We will drag this tank list into tank spawner. So tank spawner will now have access to all these five scriptable objects, right? And whenever the like someone has to create a new tank, so what color? And whenever have to create a new tank, they'll just create the scriptable objects, and they just have to uh, drag it and drop it in this master scriptable object, right? And now tank spawner will have access to all five tanks. So you have not touched anything from the scene, so that's the main point of using this uh, extra scriptable object, right? And yeah, from there we look at what I've done. So tank service. So I have a player tank list and I have an enemy tank list. So I have three tanks, like three types of tanks for both player tanks and enemy tanks. So call my prefabs player tanks. I have three tanks, right? And enemy tanks, I have three tanks. We look at the bullet types also. So bullets, I have three bullets. And basically for each of these tanks, I have like scriptable objects. So this is temporary. Yeah. So these are the for each of these tanks, I have scriptable logics, and this is the list containing the scriptable logics. The enemy, same thing, right? And lastly, the bullets, same thing. A list containing all the bullets. And we go back to tank service. So tank service now has this master scriptable logic, right? And each so this master scriptable logics has a variable tanks which is its cryptologics itself. So we have player tank list dot tanks. Because it's a list, we have the length, and from that length I'm generating a random number. So each time the game is started, the player will be a one of the three tanks, right? And yeah, so this is how I'm extracting that tank, right? So tank cryptologic tank equals the player tank list dot tanks, and because tanks is an array, we'll be able to use index to retrieve that particular tank, right? Tank scriptable logic, and from that scriptable logic we'll be able to go into controller, and we'll be able to extract the tank view, and in the model we'll be extract the speed, health, and bullet type. So that's what I've done, uh, like in terms of scriptable objects. So right now I can like change any kind of make any kind of balance changes I want uh, to the tanks, change speed, etc., and that would reflect in the game. And yeah, so we can also look at what I've done for the shooting mechanism. So in order to shoot, so shooting is basically you have the bullets, right? So bullet controller, model, service, and view. So it's the same thing. So bullet service is the main like yeah, it's a manager, right, for bullet, and basically it's able to spawn the bullet, and spawning the bullet means by itself shooting too. So when the bullet is spawned, it shoots itself, like it propels itself, right? And this is the bullet explosion, which means that when the bullet lands somewhere, it collides with something. This function is called, right? And we'll go to bullet controller. So bullet controller has two things that it needs: the scriptable object for bullet and transform. So this transform is basically the transform of the tank. No, the transform. So okay, so basically I'll show you the prefab for the tank. So what I've made is mm, cool. So we'll look at this tank, and I've created uh, empty game object called the gun. So this gun is present at a point uh, where I want the bullet to spawn, right? So this transform is what I'll be passing it to the bullet service when I want to spawn a bullet. So we look at when I'm spawning the bullet. So tank model, tank view. Okay, so tank view. Uh, this is where I'm getting the player input, right? So when I'm getting the player input, I'm so this is the tank view. I'm like already I had checked for player and getting the player input for movement, and this is what is happening here, like right. And this is for the shooting. So right now for easy access, I'm using the space key. In future, I'll be using the a sort of UI button. But right now, yeah. So tank controller does shoot and the gun. So gun is basically the game object, right? So if I go to tank view, I would have the transform of the gun. So that gun is being passed to the tank controller. So that transform. So tank controller, right? So tank controller has a shoot and the gun transform. And now I'll be calling the trans service. So we talked about the departments, right? With the what was it? The like different sections of the game, right? Not communicating with across each other, like not cross talking across each other, but communicating through the services, right? So that's the bullet service and the tank service. We have the MVC for the bullet under and MVC for the tank here. So now tank receives the input to shoot, right? And basically it'll communicate to the tank service, and tank service will communicate to the bullet service, and bullet service will communicate to MVC to spawn the bullet and propel it, right? And yeah, so that's what is happening here. So from the controller, I'm contacting the tank service to I'm just calling the function, sending the type of the bullet that the tank should spawn, right? So each tank must spawn a specific type of bullet, and the gun transform. So it will go to tank service, right? So tank service has the shoot bullet thing, and it will call the bullet service instead, and it will pass in the same values. So we go to bullet view. You can look at oh sorry, bullet service. Yeah, bullet service spawn bullet, and the two types of values pass. So here I'll be creating the new bullet controller with the given bullet type and the transform, right? So with the given bullet type, I'll be able to get the scriptable object needed. So the scriptable object has a data such as range, damage, etc. So that would be obtained from the bullet type, and yeah, from there, bullet view is what it has its own rigid body. It has its own collider, so we'll be able to do things like on collision enter. So whenever the bullet collides with something, we have to make a sort of explosion effect, right? So the bullet has collided, and then after the explosion, we also have to make sure to destroy that bullet, because it's like when the bullet hits something, it's gotta disappear, right? And yeah, so on collision under bullet controller, bullet collision. So bullet controller, yeah, bullet collision. I'm just calling the service, and the service is responsible for destroying the bullet. So yeah, bullet service. I'm instantiating the explosion effect particle system, right? And I'll play the explosion and I'll destroy the bullet view. So that's how the game object gets destroyed. So that's the things that I've done. And when this bullet like impacts with the tank, so I'll show that change too. Yeah. So bullet colliding with the tank. Let me see. Yeah, right here. So this is the tank view script. So tank view has a collider and a rigid body, so it's able to detect collisions. So I have an arc collision enter, and if it collides with a bullet view, so if it collides with a game object that contains a bullet view, then I'll take the reference to the bullet view, and yeah, so it could be like this as well, bullet view. And basically I'll get the bullet view damage, so I'll get the damage from the bullet view, and I'll call the controller and I'll pass it as the damage, right? Damage that should be reduced from the health, current health. So if you go to tank controller, we have the take damage function which takes an integer argument, and basically I'll be reducing health, like I'll be uh, decreasing it from the health, and if the health falls below zero, now we'll call the tank death function. Tank death is basically calling the service. So if we go to service, yeah, destroy tank, basically destroy the game object that is attached, like that, yeah, the game object that tank is attached to, right? So yeah, so that's basically what I've done. Thank you for watching.